Good morning, everyone, on My Time TV. Sandra Meehan here. And we have an amazing guest this morning on Conscious Chat with Sandra, Tracy. And I haven't got her last name. Tracy Seacombe. See, I've been really busy this week, so I just didn't have my notes here properly. Tracy Seacombe is, for the My Time TV viewers, and most of you are in South Australia, is a South Australian all the way grew up in Port Lincoln, a seaside country town, as many of you would know, and I've actually been to Port Lincoln, and her entrepreneur father and registered nurse mother, where she discovered psychotherapy through work experience in year 10. So I think Tracy's got a lot to share. No, I know Tracy's got a lot to share with us. Tracy set her sights on this career, won a scholarship to complete her high school years at Immanuel College in Adelaide, South Australia. During her 2 years at Immanuel, her family adopted her 2 sisters from Korea, making Tracy the eldest of 5 children. She spent a year in Crowley, Texas as an exchange student before completing a Bachelor of Science in Psychotherapy at the University of South Australia. Tracy ran her first 2 businesses during her years at university with her brother Craig. The first year 12 school jumper business. I remember those year 12 school jumpers. And an idea her and her dad Kevin brought home with them from the US, and the second, a Newsagency. Those school jumpers. My children had my daughter had a year 12 school jumper, and she still has it, and she's 39. She often drags that little school jumper out and wears it. After 7 years working in private practice as a psychotherapist, Tracy won the positions of Miss South Australia Fundraising, Miss Australia 1997, and Miss South Australia, leading to a full-time ambassador role travelling Australia to promote work in the spastic centres of Australia. Boy, that's a word I haven't heard for a long time. We don't use that word anymore, but I do remember the Miss Australia and the work that the Spastic Centre used to do. During this year, Tracy met her Irish husband Damien, who was travelling the world on a motorbike with his friend. They had their first daughter, Anne, in 1998. And second daughter Sierra in 1999. I'm shocking with names. And their son Tegan in 2005. Near the end of her pregnancy with her second child, Tracy was unable to walk, so she used her sedentary time to complete a diploma in journalism and started her third business venture, child share care. From that time, Tracy started her studies as a psychotherapist. She had a strong desire to empower people to prevent and treat their own injuries. Now, that's amazing, and most of us want to know how to do that. As a result, Tracy founded Safe Work Practice 3 months before embarking on her Miss Australia tour, and continued to run this business with a good friend and fellow psychotherapist, Mary Hill, until they sold it in February 2017. Oh my God, how'd you fit all this in? 2011 and 2012, Tracy became as thinking into results facilitated through the Proctor Gallagher Institute, and began her coaching business, Potential Realised. She was introduced to, I'm going to get Tracy to, I can't pronounce this word, so I'm not going to give it justice. I'll get her to talk more about that when I bring her on, and build a team of inspiring women with a common goal of empowering other women to live their highest health, energy, and potential by creating financial freedom. In 2016, Tracy's beloved mother passed away, and she was reminded once again of the importance of making time for herself and her family, and consolidated from running 3 businesses into launching Soul Pleaser. And I'm really, really excited to be talking about this, because it's something that's along my line of work, but very similar. Her mission is to help women know that they are enough without the need for approval from others, so they can become who they are here to be and make a difference they are here to make. She does this through her online programs, coaching retreats, books, and public speaking, and I'm worn out. Well, I'm going to bring you on, Tracy. So we're going to have a very interesting chat this morning, and let's just bring Tracy up. So without any further ado, here is Tracy. So welcome to the show, Tracy.
Hi, Sandra. Lovely to be here.
Oh, what a life you've had. My God, how have you fitted that all in and not burnt out?
Well, I did end up burnt out, which is how Soul Pleaser came about, actually. So I was doing too much. So it is something that I'm grateful for, but I did overdo it, absolutely.
So what's the global, what you were introduced?
Global. Jeunesse, yeah. So Jeunesse Global is a network marketing business, anti-aging, and so I was involved in that back in 2011.
Wow. Well, you will be a very interesting lady to talk to, fellow sister that wants to encourage women to be the best that they can. And it's amazing because when I first started this show and I first started doing my live videos, that's what I put out, that I wanted to talk to so many women that were on the same path and vibrated to that vibration of lifting other women up rather than putting other women down, and being authentic and being just who they are. And there are times when we can slip in and out of that vibration, but 90% of the time, or 99% of the time, we're on this mission of let's just lift everybody up. And we're in a time on our planet, in this extraordinary time that we are here, we should be celebrating that we're on Earth and we're going through all these changes where it's allowing us to go inward and become the best of who we truly are. So I have a question for you that's not on your list that I always throw a question in. It's got nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. So as Miss Australia, and when you went around and you traveled around the world, around Australia, what was the most empowering or most inspiring thing that you saw from another human being?
Probably the parents, probably the mothers of people with cerebral palsy. So I remember meeting someone, I've got the goosebumps back actually when I think back to it, but I remember meeting this woman, and she had been working as an advocate for people with cerebral palsy and helping other people with cerebral palsy. And then she got pregnant and she had a child with cerebral palsy. And so it just really brought home, you know, we take for granted when we have healthy children, and we don't realise the extra demands on women who are bringing up children with a disability. And of course, somebody with cerebral palsy actually thinks exactly the same way as us. So they are just like us inside a body that doesn't necessarily work well. And she was just so inspiring because of her attitude. She bent over backwards to make me feel welcome when I came to visit her, and just always putting other people first, but in a way that she didn't let the challenges get in the way of what she was capable of. And so I think it's the people, it's the unsung heroes, it's the people in the background that are just getting on with their lives and doing amazing things in their own way because they're maintaining a positive attitude when they are really challenged.
That's beautiful, and it's so true, because there's so many people that I come across in everyday life that have a lot of challenge. My brother's got my nephew has Down syndrome, and Luke is 31, 32 now, and you know, and I know the challenges that they've had, but they've taken it all in their stride, and you know, he's an amazing human being, and he's got his own place. He works a couple of days a week, and my brother and sister-in-law have done an amazing job with him by not treating him any different to their other child, my niece Kylie. And you know, it's just, yeah, what they go through, and I don't think we realize when we do have healthy children that don't have these other needs, and it's, yeah, and we as humanity should just treat everybody, every child is special and every person's special. And you know, I think what is a perfect child, or what's a perfect human being? We've all got stuff.
Exactly, that's right. And we're all the same at the essence.
Yeah. So how did Soul Pleaser come about?
Well, as you mentioned before, how did I do all those things without getting burnt out? Well, I didn't. Eventually, I did get burnt out. So back in 2016, at the time I was running Safe Work Practice with my business partner. I had the Jeunesse company going on. So I had 10,000 people in my team all around the world. And I pretty much was available to my team 24/7. So I'd go to bed, answering messages, and I'd wake up and start answering messages. I felt a real responsibility to really take good care of my team, but I let it run my life in the end, as well as my coaching business. So I was running the Thinking into Results program. And so 3 businesses, a husband, 3 children, all of the things that go with, running a household. And then my mum became sick. And she had had cancer for a while, but I found out that the cancer had moved from her breast to her stomach. And we knew at that stage that probably time was going to be limited. And I remember saying to myself, I'm really going to make the time to take my mum out to lunch every Friday because I want to make the most of the rest of the time that I have. And I didn't. I obviously continued to see her, but I didn't follow through with that commitment to myself. And I realised after Mum passed away that I was so addicted to getting that thank you from people, getting that appreciation back from people by helping them and serving them, that I'd gone beyond real service. It was more of being a martyr, which I'd actually learnt from my mother, ironically. And so in honour of her passing, I came to this realisation that I was a people pleaser, but a people pleaser to the detriment of my own health and well-being, and my mum was as well. And so I decided that for her and for my grandmother and probably for my great-grandmother, who I never knew, that I was going to break that chain of being the people pleaser to the point that we sacrificed our own well-being and shift to a soul pleaser. And the reason it's a soul pleaser is because it's different to being selfish, as in the small self, the personality. It's actually honouring our true self, so the self with a capital S, or our soul. And when we honour our soul, it's actually for the highest good for all. So we become of more service, but we don't leave ourselves out of the equation. And so I started to make that process personally. And when I did, I realised that there were so many other women who were also people pleasers who could benefit from making this shift as well. And that's how I started the Soul Pleaser business.
That's beautiful, and it falls, like I said, what you're doing aligns very much with my work, which is helping women step into their own power, through their own power, and be unapologetically visible. But it's about being present, and the first way we can be present is to ourselves. And if we aren't, and it sits very much down in that sacral that you're talking about, in the sacral region, where we become that martyr, and then we learn that from our mothers, and then we pass that on to our daughters. It's very much a divine feminine thing that we have learnt for eons and eons and eons. And it's really important that as our generation of women, that we come through and we break that, because we not only break it for ourselves, we break it for everybody in the family. And it just resonates so much with what you said. My mum is still alive, but I learnt that through her and through other things that happened in my life, to please everybody else and put everybody else first, and then you put yourself last. I learned that, changed that idea when I burnt out a couple of times. It took me a while to learn it because I burnt out a couple of times. But we become very good at being the chameleon and being what everybody else wants. And for myself, when I turned 49, I looked in the mirror one morning. I had no idea who the hell I was, and it was just like, oh. And that was my realization, was, who am I? I was stuck in an unhappy marriage and in a corporate job that paid me very well, but I didn't really like it, and I'd lost my own identity.
Yeah, and I look back and realise that that's what I'd done in some aspects of what I was doing as well. I was just so quick to say yes. I recall that yes fell out of my mouth before I even knew what I was saying yes to. It had just was so habitual to say yes. And so sometimes you can end up saying yes to opportunities without really exploring whether they are in alignment with who you are, what your values are, and what it is that you're going for and what you're creating in your life. Instead, you're doing it because you know it'll help somebody else. And so it takes us off our soul's path. Like, I believe that we do have a unique purpose. We have unique gifts and talents, and we're here to help the world by expressing those gifts and talents. But if we just continually say yes to everybody who asks us to do something, then we just get so distracted and pulled off our path. And so a lot of the women who come to me say exactly what you just said, is who am I? I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. One of the questions I ask before I start working with them is, what do you really want? And they don't even know, because they've been so busy helping other people, get what they want. So I can really relate to that feeling of feeling lost and not really knowing, what's important to you and what you really want.
Yeah, and I think too, Tracy, my age group of women that I work with are mainly between 45 and over, and because I feel that a lot of women, they go through the empty child syndrome, and then all of a sudden after their children leave, it's just like, there's me and there's him, and there's like, who am I? Because they've identified themselves as a mother, or they identify themselves as a wife, a daughter, etc. And that, for me, somebody asked me the other day, well, who's Sandra? And I said, Sandra's me.
Yeah.
The whole bag of things that makes a very essence of who I am. And what I had to learn to embrace was all the negative side of me that I didn't particularly like. But I know she's there, and I know when she comes out, and I go, oh, yeah, that's okay. That side of Sandra is out. That's fine. But be vulnerable with it, and don't be the people pleaser where you've got to be happy all the time. That's what I found really I was doing, was trying to be happy and putting on this front, where underneath all that there was all this emotional baggage that was hidden under there. How do you find that with a lot of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like that too. And I really believe that we go through our life journey experiencing what we experience because we'll end up helping people who are experiencing that as well. So I was definitely put on a happy face no matter how I was feeling. I was a street angel, house devil. That's quite often what we end up doing. So we're so busy keeping up appearances to the outside world that then we come home and the people who really wear the brunt of our emotions are the people that we love the most, our family. And my mum was like that as well. You know, everybody loved her and thought she was an angel, but sometimes her emotions had to come up somehow. And so it was in the home. And I found I was like that. And it's really amazing to be able to honour our emotions. Some of my clients also come to me numb. What can happen if you've had enough trauma and enough negative emotion that you actually don't want to feel anything. So you can't feel any scope of emotion. So I get two groups, over emotional, up and down. They're at the whim of circumstances. So when things are going well, they feel good. When things don't go their way, they feel terrible. And then I get the group who have just numbed themselves through either alcohol or too much food or, scrolling Facebook, all of these habits that we can use to just numb out because we're afraid to feel our emotions. And that's where the magic lies. If we can actually peel off those layers and unblock that blocked emotion from the past, there's freedom underneath that, and that helps us to discover who we are. That true essence is lying underneath those conditioned layers.
Awesome. Loved that answer. So what are some of the downsides of being a people pleaser?
Well,
that you can share on your journey. What have been the downsides that and some of the downsides maybe some of your clients have shared without going against confidentiality or anything like that?
Yeah. So both for me and for my clients, one of them is, as we've discussed, is burnout. We just end up tired because we're pulled in so many different directions and we don't make ourselves a priority. So I remember when I was about to make a big decision about leaving one of the businesses that I was in at the time, my husband said to me, "You need a hobby." And I remember laughing at him and saying, "I don't have time for a hobby. Like, you know, don't be ridiculous." And I look at how much I've changed, because now my priority is to feel joy. Like, that is my priority. I understand that we are pure joy. And so if we want to align to our true essence, we need to make joy our priority. And so that means discovering what makes us feel joyful and honouring that and doing that. But I would have thought that that was selfish before, and who's got time for that? I need to be rolling up my sleeves and achieving and being successful and helping other people, and there's no time for that. So when we don't honour ourselves and make ourselves a priority, then we suffer both mentally and physically. So some of my clients, for example, have let themselves become unhealthy because they don't make time to create healthy meals and exercise, to rest, to meditate, you know, to align with nature, to do all of the things that really keep us being our best version of ourselves. So that's one of the things, is we don't make ourselves a priority. Another really big one is we don't speak our truth. And some of us initially don't even know what our truth is. I know for me that in a social situation, I never wanted to offend anyone and I never wanted someone to not like me. So I just agreed with whatever they said. So I would just go along with everybody else's opinions. And when you do that over time, you don't even know what your own opinion is. You're so used to just agreeing with everyone, you completely lose any sense of what is my opinion about this, because you're just agreeing with everyone else. So that's the first thing, is not knowing what your truth is. Once you start to discover what's true for you, it's being able to speak up and actually say that. So often, to keep the peace, a lot of my clients will just go along with somebody else, and it might be their significant other, you know, their husband or their partner or their children. A lot of the women I work with, people please their children as well as their partner, as well as, you know, their extended family. And it's about honouring what's true for you, not having an expectation for the other person to necessarily agree with you, but being okay with having an opinion that's different and being able to share that with love and compassion and with lack of attachment to how the other person's going to respond. That's what we're afraid of, is they won't like me, or worse, they'll leave me if I have a different opinion.
And that is just, that's just so true, because I think we've lived in this world where we've had all this fear, and this is where it's fear that people won't like us, fear what happens if I'm different, fear what if I speak out, and we're programmed with that at such an early age. I believe we're programmed with it before we even come out of the womb, because we hear it, we feel it, and different things. And it's time in this extraordinary time that we're living in for the fear bubble to come up towards love. And I used to have this fear around what others would think of me, or if they didn't agree with me. I always took it on that it was my fault if something went wrong. So I would take the blame, and until I did hit that burnout, and I started to realize that no, it's not. It's okay to have a different opinion. But I learned that from my mother, where she just said, just let it go, say nothing. And you had to pretend everything was right and everything's happy, and it's not, but we don't want others to know. Whereas now we're living in a world of share it with people, but we have to be careful on who we share it with, because there are those out there, like, I say to my clients, and I'm sure you say to yours, it comes down to that intuitive, who we can trust and who we can't trust. And when we can't trust anybody, or we feel we can't trust anybody, it comes back to ourselves, because we're not in our own power. And I just say to people, that's my opinion, your opinion is yours, and that's okay if you don't agree with me. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to change my opinion unless there's some evidence or whatever, and we can be discussing something today and we've got different opinions on something, but that's fine, because we're all human. We're not robots. We're flesh and blood with personalities.
Yeah, and it's so important for us to celebrate our differences rather than think that people should be the same as us. And it's interesting, you know, when we talk about accepting somebody else's opinion, one of the things that I find with my clients and the way I used to be is that because we're very critical of ourselves, I find that that's another downside of being a people pleaser, is the people pleaser comes from wanting someone else to say that we're okay. And ultimately, the underlying cause of that is we want to feel lovable. And the reason we don't feel lovable is because we don't have genuine, authentic love for ourselves. And so because we don't have that, we're looking for love outside of ourselves. And so we're really hard on ourselves. So I was always fairly quick to be able to forgive someone else, but found it very difficult to forgive myself. If I made a mistake, that was the thing that I would beat myself up about. But the downside of people pleasing as well is not only do we judge ourselves, I believe that all of our relationships are a mirror of our relationship with ourselves. So if we judge ourselves, we judge others. We don't accept ourselves, we don't accept others. And so as we start to build up self-love and self-acceptance, our relationships improve because then we start to accept others as they are as well. And so that's a beautiful side effect of letting go of the people pleasing and shifting into the vibration of being a soul pleaser.
Look, Tracy, I'm going to ask you something that isn't on the list, but I feel it's important to go down this rabbit hole. So when we start to do this, when we change our vibration from that people pleaser to becoming a soul pleaser, there's many people along the way that we were people pleasing that all of a sudden don't like it and don't like the new way that we are, because all of a sudden we're standing in our own power and we're saying no, or you know, and doing what we want rather than what others want. What's your advice for people, that women or men, and that are watching today's conversation, that you would give them to help them, just because it's like you've got to keep doing it, because they've been doing it to us for so long that we have to keep showing up in that vibration of soul pleaser. And sometimes we do slip back and then come back. So what advice do you give to your clients, and what advice can you give to the viewers to just give them that confidence to keep going with it?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is it's completely normal. So when we start to change, naturally the people around us will notice that we're changing, and it's normal for you to slip back into your old habits. So your old habits are your unconscious ones. And of course, it's easier to be unconscious and on autopilot than it is to be conscious and make choices from a conscious place. So it's much easier to slip back into old habits. And all I would say is, when you notice yourself falling back into the people-pleasing ways, that you congratulate yourself for awareness of it, because that's the first step. Initially, you don't even realize you're doing it. That's how we end up burnt out, is we don't even realize. So the fact that you're aware is really good. Don't beat yourself up for it, and just say, this is the part of the journey, and this is the way that we grow, is by doing it less and less over time. The other thing I would say is that for the people who you're really close to, let them know, be really vulnerable with them, and let them know that you're doing this work and that you are changing and that you are going to start to show up differently. So you can say things like, do you know what? I know that you've told me this before, and in the past I have agreed, but I'm going to be really honest with you and let you know that I actually never have agreed, and I'm sorry that I haven't been honest with you about that. But the reason I wasn't honest was I was afraid of the way that you would react. But I don't want to be like that anymore. I want to be honest. And the fact that I don't agree with you doesn't matter. You know, I honor your opinion about it, but I do want to tell you that this is really how I feel about it. And so then it's just easing that person into, you know, your new way of showing up. But I would also say that it's quite natural for some relationships to gradually dissolve because you step into the truth of who you are, rather than being someone different so that you can fit in with people that you're really not in alignment with. And that's okay. And there will be new people who will start to come into your life and start to show up who are on the same vibration as you. And so don't be afraid of that falling away. That can happen with some friendships and some relationships through work and things like that.
Yeah, it can. A lot of I've noticed in with COVID, this funny little time we're having on the planet at the moment, that there's a lot of relationships that are breaking up because people are spending more time going in, and they're actually got more time together, and they're just like, oh, this isn't working for me, and they're really being made to face reality or face their truths and be honest. And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of relationships break down, friendships break down, all sorts of, and like I get excited when I see that, not because I'm happy that someone's relationship has gone bust, but I get excited because I see the vibration of the planet changes, because they're moving out of that heavy vibration into something light, if it's good for them. And it's, yeah, I don't encourage people to break their relationships, but when they do and they come out of something that isn't aligned for them, and we've got so many relationships on the planet where we're in it and we're not consciously aware of what we're doing. It's just like we're in that, we're just being robots every day, and then children come into the equation and all of that, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And when we can start to have these processes, like you teach your clients to then talk with their partners and everything and their children. And I'm really interested in how you go about helping women, especially, not pleasing their children all the time, because I find that, especially with the younger generation, is that they want to be friends. They don't want to be parents.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I think it's first of all just being aware of it, noticing whether you are saying your truth to your children or whether you're saying what you think they want to hear so that they like you and they think that you're a cool mum, you know. So it's just really being honest with yourself about that. And also, I think sometimes we want to protect our children from negative emotions, but they need to go through their own hero's journey. I believe that we all have a life story that is our hero's journey. So we have to go through whatever our unique challenge is. So for me, for example, I had an eating disorder in my teenage years. I went through burnout. You know, it was all part of my story, and it has made me who I am today. And our children will go through their own story. And so we can't cocoon them and protect them from that. We can't stop them from feeling negative emotions. So it's this responsibility that we take on as people pleasers, where we feel responsible for how our children feel. And we don't have that responsibility. Our children need to feel what they're going to feel, because that is the way that they tune in to the messages that they're getting from Source, the universe, God, whatever word resonates, to guide them. And so when we want to wrap them in cotton wool and protect them from all emotions, we're not allowing them to grow into who they're here to be. And so when we look at it from that point of view, we realize if we just keep saying yes to them to keep them happy, we're actually blocking that growth. So we need to look at what is the highest good for all when we make our choices, rather than what's going to keep the peace, because we don't want them to crack it, and that will be uncomfortable for us and uncomfortable for them. You know, it's just kind of the almost lazy way for us to go, okay, yes, rather than being consistent and them learning that no, at the moment, this is not the ideal choice for you. And we have that experience to be able to guide them. And also it comes from trusting yourself too. It can be just easier to let the child choose. And we really want them to develop that sense of self so that they can create their own path. But our role is to also give them guidance as well.
Awesome. And I'd like to just go back a bit, because when you said no in there, to when we are people pleasers and we say yes all the time. Do you think it's because we're so much negativity around the word no? Like there's like, no, you can't do that. No, you're not going to do that. No, 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 no. Whereas we're programmed not to say the word no when people want us to do something.
Yeah, I think that it just makes us a nice person if we always say yes. And we think, you know, we're actually proud of that about ourselves, is everybody likes me because they know I'll say yes. And, you know, when I'm working with clients, sometimes I'll be working with the employer who loves the employee who always says yes. And so the employee who always says yes really wants that approval from the employer, and so continues to say yes, and they're not communicating the truth to each other. And so if we show up in a certain way, then people will continue to treat us the way they're inviting us to treat them. So if we always say yes, we're creating that expectation. We can blame them. Oh, they always ask me to do things. Oh, well, how about the fact that you always say yes? So they are always thinking, I'll ask her because she obviously wants to do it because she always says yes.
Yeah, and you know, I get interviewed on I not only interview people on my show, but I get interviewed on a lot of other podcasts, and I just sometimes I just message them and go, I'd love to be on your show, and people say, but you can't do that. I said, yeah, what's the worst thing they can say is no? Well, that's okay, because I'm okay in hearing the word no. And you know, it's like I had a one guy over in the UK said to me, why do you know, he gave me this whole list of things, and he said, what's the worst thing that I could possibly say to you? I said, nothing, because if you say no, I'll just go and find somebody else's show that I might be able to get on. And he was just like, nobody's ever said that, because they're not, people are afraid, no matter how big or how famous somebody is. You know, if you want something, if you don't ask, you will never know. And, you know, I'm always like, just ask. And, you know, people say to me, how I get on your show, just ask. That's the way I say no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think people are afraid of no because they feel like it's rejection.
Yes.
And it might also be the reason mums don't want to say no to their children, because they don't want their child to feel rejected. But it's important for children to learn, and for us to learn, that no is not rejection. It's not saying that you're not a good person. It's just no to what you have on offer. And it's the same for women who are in business. You know, we both would have clients that have their own businesses, and they can be so afraid of asking for the sale because they're so afraid of the no, because they think it's a rejection of them. But they need to just put themselves in the other person's shoes and understand that it's not for that other person, the thing that you have to offer. It's not you personally. So once you really have peace with that, then you can confidently offer things to people and be quite okay with yes or no.
Yeah, and like we've both worked with Mark Boness, and this is something that Mark teaches, and he tells us all. You know, this morning 10,000 people woke up in tears, wanting what you've got to offer. So just go out and find them. And another thing that Mark is really, you know, there's 7 billion people in the world. There's clients out there for you. You know, not everyone's going to like you or like what you've got to offer, but you can't service all of them. So just find those that resonate with you. And if you're doing something that somebody else is doing, it doesn't matter, because that's their energy, and their tribe will come to them, and your tribe will come to you. And I think as women, we get so tied up in that. I've got to please everybody because I might lose a sale, or, you know, where I find men don't do that. You know, I've been coached by a lot of men, and most men that I am coached by, they go, yeah, share my stuff, that's okay, no worries. You work with women coaches, and they're like the ones that some of the ones I have, don't share my stuff, don't do this, and they get really funny if somebody does the same thing they do. Men really don't care. They're too busy focused on what they're doing, staying in their own lane.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, because that's another symptom of people pleasing, is that we compare ourselves to others. And so you started this whole conversation talking about lifting other women up. And if we're going to lift other women up, we need to stop comparing ourselves with each other and instead embrace our uniqueness. And I think that's why you need to go through the process of shedding the conditioned layers, really discovering the truth of who you are, owning that, showing up as you. Don't try to be like anyone else. Don't look at someone else and think, oh, she's better than me at this, that, and the other. We are all unique, and we will attract the person who resonates with what we are saying because we're being completely authentic and vulnerable. Sometimes when people reach out to me to ask about the Soul Pleaser program, I'll ask them how they found me, and they'll say that they've read my book or watched my webinar or something like that. And I'll say, what resonated with you? And they'll say sometimes, I don't even know, it was something about you. It was your energy. I just felt called to talk to you. That is our soul signature communicating with somebody else's soul signature, which is a match. There are plenty of people out in the world that are a match to you and your soul signature. And so that's why if you do this work and become authentically you, you will have a flow of abundant clients who are your ideal clients, because you don't have to try, you just have to show up and be you.
Oh, perfect. I hear this all the time from women that have stepped up and they're just being themselves, and they have a tribe of clients that come through. And that's from, you know, I interview lots of women all around the world, and they've all got the same message. And when you're really in your power, as you are, Tracy, you just say it with so much authenticity and vulnerability, but so much heart in that, and that comes across. So I hope all the viewers heard that, saw that, and felt that, because it was very, very heartfelt. So thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
And why would somebody want to become more conscious? I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you.
I love that question. So sometimes people don't realize that they want to become more conscious. What they realize is that they're in pain and that they're uncomfortable, and they don't want to feel that discomfort anymore. So when somebody comes to me who is semi-conscious, because they can't be completely unconscious if they're coming to me in the first place, they wouldn't resonate with my energy at all. What they're focused on is the problem. And so what I say to them, this is really good news. The fact that you're really uncomfortable is the start of your awakening, which means you're going to become more conscious. And so we often go through burnout or the loss of a loved one, or we hit rock bottom in some way, and we just feel like we're close to giving up, but we don't. It's not our nature to give up. And it's at this precipice of surrender where there's so much opportunity for us to start to realize the truth about what's really going on here, that we're not just this body. We're not just here to have relationships and achieve things and get things. And there is so much more to life. There is so much more meaning to our existence. And so it's very, very exciting when we're on that edge. So consciousness comes when we notice our behavior and we take responsibility for what's happening in our life. When we're completely unconscious, we think life is happening to us and we blame circumstances. And if only he would stop doing that, or she would, behave differently, or the government, or all the different things that we blame. So that first awakening comes from, oh my goodness, I'm here creating my life. And if I want to create a different life, then I can tune in, tap into that ever-flowing creative energy that's available to us, and choose how I want to show up and who I want to become. And so the benefit, why would you become more conscious, is that when you're conscious, you tap into your true essence, which is joy, and you can change your experience of any circumstances. So what a lot of my clients will say to me after a few months is, nothing in my life has changed, but my experience of it has changed. I am now loving the thing that I was hating. And from that place, we're empowered to make a new choice and change the circumstances.
We sure are. And I use the words aware, and when we are either unaware, because a lot of people don't like the word conscious and unconscious. So or awake or unawake. So I've chosen through this COVID that we're doing, because of everything, to use the words aware and unaware, because I felt that, and I found that when I use those words, it empowered people to actually look at it. Oh, maybe I'm not aware, because they didn't feel as if they were being judged by not being awake or unawake, because there's so much of that across the internet and so much of unconscious and conscious. And even though it means exactly the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the words that I've chosen through this time that we're going through to make people, to lift people up into an awareness that, and they go, I'm not aware of that. Oh, it's not your fault. You just weren't aware.
Yeah.
And they're like, so I said, now you are, and they're like, yeah, and it makes them start to think, and it changes the whole vibration around this conscious, unconscious, awake, unawake, words that we use in the spiritual industry and in the whatever we want to call it. But if we want to grab those others that truly need us and put it into to the other words, they're like, oh yeah, and you can see the light bulbs just go on and light up. And when we aren't, when we, I know for myself, when you use the word responsibility, and a few years ago, 7 years ago, I had something major going on in my life, and I went to see this healer, and she said to me, Sandra, when are you going to take responsibility? And I was like, I was fairly aware, but I couldn't see it. I was unaware at this stage that I'd played any role in this. It was just like totally not, I'm not owning it. And I walked out of there and I just went, I won't tell you what I said to myself. But then at some point I sat down and I went, yeah, I may not be responsible for what happened, but I am responsible for healing me by what I went through.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, but in a way I was responsible because I allowed it to happen, even when I was in it. And you can't see that sometimes when you're in something because you're unaware of it, because everything's going on around you. And Carl Jung, the fame, he said, we are not what happened to us, we are who we've chosen to become. And it's so true in everyday life.
Yeah, and there's no need to have any judgment around your level of consciousness or awareness, because it's why we're all here, is to go through this process of because when we, are young, you can see how aware and conscious and open-minded little children are, because they see the wonder of a flower. They can stop and just look at the beauty of a flower for minutes on end until we interrupt them and say, come on, we need to get going. So we just fill our minds and get very distracted from being very aware and just noticing and being present. So as you mentioned earlier, it's all about being present. And so it doesn't need to be complicated. It's like, in this moment, are you just lost with your thoughts? It's like if you had a job and you always drove home and you're supposed to go to the dentist on the way home, and all of a sudden you have just gone home because you're just so lost in your thoughts. You're not present and you're not focusing. And so many of us can get lost in our thoughts. And so when we become present, there is so much joy to experience, because one of my clients the other day said that she looked up at the sky and she realised how magnificent it was and how long it's been since she last looked up at the sky and noticed how amazing it is.
And that's so true, Tracy. When we're not present, anchored in our bodies and just seeing what's happening around us, and especially like we've got 2020, it's 2020 vision. This is the year with our 2020 vision to be really present. And I see parents, they give their children iPhones and they say, well, my kids are misbehaving, and they might be sitting there on their iPhone, not totally unaware of what their children are doing because they're not present. And they say, well, I didn't know this or I didn't know that. It's because we're not present in our everyday life at this moment. It would be like me being here talking to you, or you're talking to me, and you're on your phone and you're checking your messages, and that, it's about being present in the moment. And when we're present in the moment, we can see all the gifts that it brings us.
And you can feel that deep connection with somebody when they truly listen to you, because they're present, they're in the moment, they're not distracted thinking about something else, they're actively listening, and that's connection. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do to increase your consciousness?
I connect with nature is one of my favourites. So I'm very fortunate to live close to the beach. So I walk along the beach every day. I love being in nature. I pat my dog. I find that there is great alignment, you know, with pets. I meditate. So I do present moment meditation. So just, you know, being present in the moment and following my breath, but I also like guided meditations as well. And yoga. I really love yoga. I find that because I'm focused on what my body's doing, it's quite a good way to move myself from my head into my body.
I love that you said move from your head into your body, and that's where when we can bring those two together, because our heart is our gateway, and that there's a big thing around dropping from your head into your heart, but I believe that it's a choice of bringing the two together, because we still need our head and we still need our heart. And if we can work from both spaces, in that space of compassion and joy, and we can manifest so much, because it's okay to work from your heart, but we still need our mind and our head to do the steps and the planning and everything, but we just let it flow from our heart on what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's so true. It's about getting that balance, because you can meet people that, you know, are too flighty and they're not grounded enough and they're not using the logical part of the mind enough. And so they sort of spin their wheels and go around in circles. And then, of course, the other extreme, which was me, which was just too much in my head and definitely not in my heart. In fact, I found that even my posture has changed because my heart was closed. It was like my shoulders were forward. I was like protecting myself. I didn't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
And I now opened up my heart and have this, you know, more erect posture, because I've opened up that space both physically and emotionally. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And Tracy, would you say, and this isn't on your list, would you say that to open the heart, you know, it's a big thing that, you know, it's a open your heart, drop more into your heart, but we cannot drop into our heart until we've cleared the rest of our other, the lower chakras, the physical, like, you know, our self-love, our self-worth, our forgiveness, everything, that the fear, that opens up our heart. That allows us to open up our heart. We just can't go. And most people think, well, my heart's open, but they still got all this other stuff. And they're like, I can't open it up. And I say to my clients, that's because we've still got to work on the lower three chakras, and the voice and the other three, and then the heart opens up unconditionally.
Yeah, you really need the balance of all of them. And so it's becoming aware of where we're stuck. And as you learn about chakras and energy, and you learn about the emotions that we hold on to, the resentment, regret, guilt, you know, all of the emotions that keep us stuck, and you do the body work and the energy work, and even just allowing yourself to feel. I think that a lot of people, like we talked about before, have kept on that happy face and just have been so afraid of feeling the emotion, letting it pass through us and allowing it to move, so that we can really open up that heart. I think for me, I kept my heart closed because I didn't want to get hurt. And I think a lot of people do that to protect themselves.
Sure is. And I've got one last question for you before you can, then we'll share with the viewers where they can find you and your amazing work. What lights you up?
Oh, this lights me up, Sandra. Just having conversations like this, talking to you, talking to my clients, talking to people who are interested in this information, reading about this, learning from other people about this. I just love talking about, I think life is fascinating. I think I'm very philosophical. I love the meaning of life. I love the fact that we have so much available to us that we don't even know, that life is just so intricate and exciting and interesting and inspiring. And so I love deeper conversations. I'm not one for much small talk.
Cool. Awesome. So where can the viewers find you and your amazing work, and how can they connect with you?
So a couple of ways. You can find me at my website, which is just my name, tracyseacombe.com.au. And you can also find my Facebook group, which is called Soul Pleaser. And I've got a challenge coming up on the 24th of August. It is booked out now. But if you join the Soul Pleaser group, you can click on the link to put yourself on the waiting list for my next challenge, because this one is full, starting the 24th of August. And I also have a free book that you can download from my website.
I've just scooted across to your page. That's why I was listening to you, and so I can send this out to people. I don't know whether that came through to you or whether I will post it up. Oh no, it's up
yeah, there it is. The Soul Pleaser group's up there. Yep. Thank you.
So people can find you and where they can find you. And it's been an absolute joy to chat with you today and share to share what you do, and to share your love and to share your compassion with so many people. And whereabouts in South Australia are you?
I'm in Adelaide.
Oh, I lived in Adelaide for a while. I married a South Australian.
Oh, did you? Yeah, lovely. Well,
Yeah,
I've absolutely loved this too, Sandra, and you obviously have so much wisdom. I'm really inspired by you and what you do. So thank you for having me today.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm sure our paths are going to cross again, and I'd love to have you one night over on Vino and chat. And yeah, when we finish the show, let's have a chat. And yeah, so for all the viewers out there, I look forward to I know you've got something out of this. Please connect with Tracy. Check her group out. Check out what she does. Check out her Facebook page. Download her book. And if it doesn't resonate with you, I'm sure you'll know somebody that does. And I know that Tracy works with the amazing Mark Bowness, and I know that everything Tracy would do in her group would be in alignment, would be authentic, and would be with integrity, because this is how Mark teaches us and shows us. I've worked with Mark. I've built my group with Mark, and that's the main thing that he impresses with everybody, is to be honest, be in your integrity, be authentic, and be vulnerable, because if we're not any of that, we're not being who we truly are and standing in our own truth. So until next week, when I have another amazing guest, but tonight over on Vino and Chat, I've got the amazing Matthew Greenwood. I'm chatting with him tonight, and you can catch us there at 7 o'clock tonight on Vino and Chat with Sandra Meehan. Thank you so much, viewers.